Good evening, everybody. Apologies for the delayed start, but this exhibition is all about family, and we have some important family members who are still stuck in traffic. But we're gonna get going. We're gonna ease into it. You have to listen to me talk for a little while, so hopefully by the time I'm done yammering and we get to the main event, they will have arrived. But again, sorry to keep you waiting. Good evening. I'm Carrie Weaver. I'm the executive director of the Fairfield University Art Museum, and we are so delighted that you are all here tonight for this opening celebration of our final exhibition of this academic year. Last but absolutely not least, Famous and Family Through the Lens of Trude Fleischmann. We are so pleased to present this landmark show of over 100 photographs by Fleischmann, one of the most accomplished women photographers of the 20th century. This show, the first solo museum exhibition of the photographer's work to be presented in the United States, highlights Fleischmann's groundbreaking career in Vienna during the 1920s and 30s, as well as her influential work in the United States after her emigration in 1939. It features never-before-exhibited works from her cousins, the Rosenbergs, the Haas and Cornelius family collections, as well as the family collection of her student and lifelong friend, photographer Helen Post. Together, these works provide an unprecedented and intimate view of the photographer's personal and professional legacy. 3 years ago, my friend, Barbara Bobby Rosenberg visited my office with the exhibition catalog, the beautiful exhibition catalog from the Trude Fleischmann retrospective, A Self-Assured Eye, held in 2011 at the Wien Museum in Vienna. I'd only met her once or twice at this point. She'd done some photography for the Gladys Triana show we had in the Walsh Gallery. And she said, I have an exhibition idea. Can I come talk to you about it? And I'm like, sure, come talk to me. She probably no, but come talk to me. She asked if I'd be interested in curating and presenting an exhibition of Fleischmann's photographs. After looking at the remarkable catalog, I said, absolutely, 100%. I tell you to go get the catalog, but it costs $300 on eBay or Amazon, but it is absolutely stunning. And our speaker this evening was the co-curator of that exhibition, so you will be in good hands. Bobby has been my co-curator and intrepid partner as we have spent the last 3 years seeking out stellar examples of Fleischmann's work for this exhibition. As she explained at our first meeting, she could supply us with something that no previous exhibition had really had access to, an enormous trove of photographs of Fleischmann's family and friends. We traveled together to Vermont, East Hampton, and New York City, and I heard friends and family stories of time spent with Fleischmann, and selected those works that I felt truly provided the most insight into her personal life and artistic practice. It's been a remarkable journey and privilege to reconstruct Fleischmann's career for this exhibition, both through her photographs and some of the ephemera kept and collected by her extended family. While Fleischmann is remembered primarily as a portrait photographer, she was so much more than that. I know you're going to enjoy hearing Frauke Kreutler present this evening's opening night lecture and learning more. Before we get to that, as always, I have some thank yous and housekeeping notes. I would like to thank the many lenders to this exhibition who have made it possible. The Wien Museum, Vienna, and their registrar, Andrea Glatz. The New York Public Library and their curator, Elizabeth Cronin, who's going to come and present a program on Heimat or homeland photography in conjunction with the exhibition next month. And the private collectors, Terry and Melissa Wallace, and Mark Mattis and Judith Hochberg, for their important contributions to this exhibition. What makes this exhibition unique, however, as I've mentioned, is the friends and family of Trude Fleischmann, who provided the majority of the loaned material. These include Bobby and her brother, Dr. Henry Rosenberg, Trude's cousins, Peter Maudley, the son of Helen Post, Joanna Reuter, granddaughter of Trude's dear friends Hermione and Joseph Cornides, and Miriam Haas, daughter of Robert Haas. We're deeply grateful and appreciative to all of you for your trust in lending us numerous photographs, and we thank you for joining us with your families here tonight. Sorry to do this to you all. But could the following people please stand for just a moment? Bobby Loss, Henry Rosenberg, Peter and Phyllis Modley, Marion Modley, if you're here, Joanna Reuter, and Miriam and Catherine Haas. All of you knew Trude. Quite an amazing group. You all knew Trude. You were photographed by her. Is there anyone else here by chance who was photographed by Trude? Who I missed? Who showed up? No? That would be really cool. We have several other special guests with us this evening. I'd like to acknowledge Suzanne Kepler-Schlesinger, director of the Austrian Cultural Forum of New York and wife of the incoming Consul General of Austria, Thomas Schlesinger, and Stephanie Boomen, head of the Visual Arts, Architecture, and Design Division of the Austrian Cultural Forum. Thank you both for coming out from the city for this event. Also joining us is Susie Nemec, wife of our university president, and our provost, Christine Siegel. Thank you all for being here. All right. Everyone will have shown up by the time I get this done. A special thank you to Heike Herberg, who wrote the informative biographic essay on Fleischmann in the exhibition catalog. She'll be speaking tomorrow. I know you'd all love to come to that. She's going to be with Bobby Loss and Henry Rosenberg talking about family photographs and Fleischmann as a family photographer. We're sold out. That is at capacity. But don't worry, thanks to a generous donation, we're going to be recording their conversation ahead of the event. We're going to make a great video out of it, and we'll be posting that online so you can all see it. So sorry you have to miss the event. We're going to fill the gallery. It's going to be crazy. Thanks as always go to the exceptional museum team for their hard work in bringing this exhibition and its programming to life. Michelle DiMarzo, Curator of Education and Academic Engagement, Megan Pacqua, Museum Registrar, Heather Coleman, Museum Assistant, and Elizabeth Viano, Museum Educator. I could not do it without all of you. For those of you who don't know, the museum is now on Bloomberg Connects. Check it out. Find the exhibition audio guide. We have a film that was made that's on view in the gallery, but it's also on Bloomberg Connects. You can see it there, and information about upcoming programs and more. I think I'm almost done. When the lecture is over, the shuttle out front will be running on a loop. You can take that back up to Bellarmine Hall. It'll be running till 8 o'clock. You are also welcome to drive up the hill and look for parking up there. You can walk, whatever you would like. In Bellarmine Hall, for those of you who have not been here before, you will find food, drink, and the exhibition. A string quartet, too. All right. I have to encourage you, if you come back down here to get your car, the Walsh Gallery is right over there in the Quick Center for the Arts. That's our other gallery, and we have a beautiful exhibition that is open till 8 o'clock on Gorta Moore, Selections from Ireland's Great Hunger. Feel free to go check it out. And finally, it is my great pleasure now to introduce tonight's speaker. Hopefully all of our guests have arrived. Frauke Kreutler is the curator of the History of Photography at the Wien Museum in Vienna. She is a trained photographer who studied art history at the universities of Vienna and Dublin. She has published on Austrian photographic, cultural, and historical topics of the 19th and 20th centuries. Please join me in welcoming Frauke Kreutler.
Let me here. Yes, I'm making sure I didn't kick any of them papers. Thank you, Carrie, for this nice introduction. Yeah, I will start right now. So, Trude Fleischmann was one of the most confident young Jewish women photographers who established their own studios in Vienna after World War I, forging successful careers in a field traditionally dominated by men. She was one of the most innovative, productive, and celebrated Austrian photographers of the 1920s and 30s, with her studio becoming a focal point of Viennese cultural life. However, her flourishing career came to an abrupt end with Austria's annexation by Nazi Germany. In 1938, Fleischmann managed to escape via Paris to London and then to the United States. She arrived in Manhattan aboard the passenger liner Penland on April 4, 1939, where she was welcomed by her friend Helen Post Modley. She said later in an interview, "She picked me up from the ship and took me straight to her country house, about 2 hours outside New York City. We drove through breathtaking countryside and I was astonished. I never imagined such landscapes existed in America." The beautiful landscape Fleischmann refers to here is Connecticut, where her friend's home was nestled deep in the woods on the edge of the small town of Sharon. And as fate would have it, the first comprehensive monographic exhibition of Fleischmann's work in the United States is taking place in Connecticut, the very state that so deeply impressed her upon her arrival in the country. So it is therefore a great privilege for me to open the exhibition Famous and Family through the Lens of Trude Fleischmann here in Connecticut at the Fairfield University Art Museum with you this evening. I have this evening the pleasure of offering you a glimpse into the life of the photographer Trude Fleischmann. But let's begin at the start of Trude Fleischmann's career in Vienna. When Trude Fleischmann opened her own studio in early 1920s, she was just 25 years old. She was part of a group of young women photographers who launched their careers during or shortly after World War I. Like many of her contemporaries, Fleischmann's decision to become self-employed was not universally welcomed. Older and more conservative photographers viewed the emergence of these confident professional women as a genuine threat to the art of photography. In 1921, the influential Viennese photographer and photojournalist Hermann Clemens Kosel harshly criticized these young women, accusing them of bringing harlotry into photography with their superficial, sensual, and postmodel-like views, and claiming that they had dragged the moral seriousness of art down into vulgarity. He concluded that only a few women have retained the seriousness of their profession. Although women were already working behind the camera before 1914, they were rarely recognized as business owners. Their names were often absent from studio signs, hidden behind male-dominated branding. However, this began to change in the early 20th century. Like Trude Fleischmann, many of these pioneering women studied at the Grafische Lehr- und Versuchsanstalt, one of the first institutions to offer photography courses to women, starting in 1908. In contrast, the prestigious Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna did not admit women until 1922. And let's not forget, the war and the labor shortage caused by the absence of men provided more and more young women with access to education, career opportunities, and better prospects for advancement. Photography thus became a promising path to independence. But these young female graduates were no longer content with unskilled labor or working for others. They opened their own studios, now proudly under their own names. Among them were Edith Barakovic, Edith Glogau, Grete Collina, Stefanie Brandl, Marianne Bergler, Margarete Weiselstein, Josephine Barani, Helene Kiss, Peppa Felczarek, Hella Katz, Olga Vlasic, Kitty Hoffmann, Trude Geiringer, and Dora Horowitz. Despite their diverse life and career paths, they shared a few key characteristics. Nearly all were born around the turn of the century. Most were of Jewish origin, and almost all graduated from the Grafische Lehr- und Versuchsanstalt in Vienna during or shortly after the war. Their clients were primarily women, actresses, dancers, artists, and members of Viennese bourgeois society. In the summer of 1916, Fleischmann completed her studies and applied for an internship at Atelier Dora, one of Vienna's most prestigious photography studios run by Dora Kalmus and her colleague Arthur Bender. Kalmus was one of the few female photographers who, as I have already mentioned, worked independently before 1914. Securing a position at Atelier Dora was highly competitive, as the studio attracted a distinguished clientele from the city's cultural elite, upper middle class, and aristocracy. Atelier Dora was at the forefront of modern portrait photography, moving away from rigid traditional styles through carefully curated compositions, selected props, and innovative formats. The studio set itself apart from conventional photography, offering clients a more personal and expressive form of portraiture. Despite the prestige of Atelier Dora, here is an example of a photograph of her on the left side, which shows the dancer Anna Pavlova in 1914. It's a very nice example of her photograph. Yes, despite the prestige of Atelier Dora, Trude Fleischmann left after just 2 weeks, as Madame Dora criticized her of working too slowly when retouching photographs. She then joined the equally renowned Atelier Schiebert, where she completed the required 3-year work placement necessary for self-employment. On the right side, you see an example of Atelier Schiebert, which shows the very well-known artist Oskar Kokoschka as a soldier during the First World War. Yes. During Schiebert's temporary absence, Fleischmann had the opportunity to work independently behind the camera alongside her colleagues. Some of her earliest works date back to this period, including several photographs taken in Schiebert's studio in 1918, such as the double portrait of the architect Adolf Loos and the writer Peter Altenberg, which you can see on the right side, and as well as a portrait of the arts and craft artist Mela Köhler. In her portrait of Köhler, Fleischmann still holds to the soft, atmospheric style favored by her mentor. However, in the portrait of Loos and Altenberg, her artistic evolution becomes evident. Here, she moved towards a simpler, more restrained aesthetic, favoring clarity and directness. This shift toward a more sober, modern approach would later define her distinctive photographic style. Although Fleischmann founded her studio in 1920 during the turbulent post-war period, she quickly established herself as a highly regarded society photographer. Her family provided the necessary capital, as her father was a successful businessman. Her mother is believed to have encouraged and actively supported her career choice, even helping her find the perfect studio. They secured an ideal location in Vienna's first district, close to the town hall, the university, and several theaters. Right at the heart of the city's vibrant cultural scene and perfectly positioned to attract their target clientele. This is, of course, a later example of of a photograph of the Ebendorfer Straße number 3, where she had her studio. It's a later photograph, but the house is still the same. And on the left side here is the evidence in the photo, telephone book of the 1930s that she had there, her studio. In January 1931, press photographer Annie Schulz created a portrait series for the magazine Die Bühne, which means the stage, a highly popular lifestyle magazine at the time, featuring renowned female photographers from Vienna. Schulz chose to open the series titled Wiener Fotografen weltbekannt, which means world-famous Viennese photographers, with none other than Trude Fleischmann. The accompanying images show Fleischmann during an exhibition at her studio in November 1929, as well as a striking portrait of her with her studio camera. In the 1920s, the leading photography studios embraced the artistic trend of the time. Their portrait style, through still echoing tradition, was rooted in a more objective and contemporary approach. Positions at the crossroads of art photography and the emerging new vision, which means das neue Sehen in German, this studio embodied a form of moderate modernism. Fleischmann also distinguished herself from the idealized soft-focus tradition of art photography known as pictorialism. She went beyond the conventional standards of professional portrait photography. Her work was not about capturing status, class, or generic types. It was about the individual. She focused on the face, the gaze, the gesture, bringing out the unique character of each subject with striking clarity and depth. Fleischmann herself embodied the spirit of the self-assured, confident, and independent woman. At the same time, the image of the so-called new woman, with the modern hairstyle, contemporary fashion, and the ideas she represented demanded a fresh visual language, a new way of presenting and posing. Fleischmann openly embraced the influences of modernism, yet she chose a more refined path. Throughout her career, Trude Fleischmann photographed numerous representatives of the dance avant-garde. These dancers presented themselves before the camera in dynamic poses and costumes, whether individually or in groups, in studio settings or outdoors. Here you can see on the left side the dancer Mira Zirul, whose expressive portrait we have seen earlier, observed earlier. This one is the same woman on the left side. And on the right side is Tilly Losch. She was a very celebrated ballet dancer from the Vienna State Opera. And here on the left side, Fleischmann captured the dancer Toni Birkmeier, who became famous primarily for his Toni Birkmeier ballet, which is shown on the right. And Fleischmann photographed the ballet on the rooftop of her studio, creating an image that exemplifies how she incorporated the new vision style, das neue Sehen, into her work. Using an extreme top-down perspective and dynamic framing, she sought to translate the energy of dance into a striking visual composition. However, the most famous series, featuring a dancer photographed by Trude Fleischmann, is undoubtedly that of Claire Bauhoff. In 1925, the iconic photo series was captured in Fleischmann's studio. The dancer's light form stands stark against the dark background, drawing our full attention to her athletic body. There are no distractions, no props, no jewelry, no exaggerated gestures. Fleischmann presents the dancer almost like a sculpture, leaving aside any narrative explanation for her full nudity. No eye contact is made with the viewer. The dancer seems entirely focused on herself, her body, and the act of pausing. Her expression is melancholic and her presence introspective. Clara Amanda Anna Bauer, known by her stage name Claire Bauhoff, decided against her parents' wishes to pursue a career on stage. Between 1913 and 1915, she studied dance under Rudolf Bode, who combined elements of gymnastics with dance, created a whole body gymnastics and reviving the rhythm of the body independent of music. In the 1920s, Bauhoff gained recognition for her expressive artistic dance style, frequently performing in Vienna at the Konzerthaus and the Sezession. Until the end of the First World War, scantily dressed female dancers were primarily seen on the stages of various variety shows. These performers presented themselves in revealing costumes to a predominantly male audience, dancing bare-chested as Indian bayadères or showing a lot of leg, and sometimes a little more, in the cancan. Expressive dance in light clothing was a new development, and in contrast to the dance style in variety shows, it sought to establish itself as a serious art form. Like the free body movement that was widespread at the turn of the century, expressive dance also aimed to redefine the concept of the body. Vienna became a center for free dance during the interwar period. Here are some example of different dance schools and also made by different photographers, only to that you see that the variety of the dance avant-garde. And the roots of the Viennese dance avant-garde can be traced back to the turn of the 19th and the 20th century, when free dance emerged under the influence of pioneer Isadora Duncan. Alongside the various current of life reform movements and gymnastics, which celebrated the body and physical culture, this new form of dance embodied the era spirit of optimism. It played a central role in shaping a new awareness of the body, one that broke free from the constraints of the corset and the ballet shoes, as well as from bourgeois traditions and the rigid frameworks of classic ballet. Claire Bauhoff owed her fame as a nude dancer more to Trude Fleischmann's nude photographs than to her performances on stage. These photographs were widely distributed and quickly caused a sensation. When Bauhoff performed at the Berlin Variety Theater in the Admiralspalast on Friedrichstraße in 1925, the Fleischmann photos were displayed in the preview showcase. The scandal followed soon after, and the photos were confiscated by the police, which only made her, of course, more famous. The issue was that the nudes were exhibited without the delicate areas being covered with paper, as was customary at the time. Nude photography was, of course, not an innovation of the 1920s. This genre has existed since the invention of photography. Taken in private settings, these images often changed hands. Their appeal lay in the natural representation they offered. The women's undressing was often the focus of the depiction, and the viewer became an imaginary lover through the corresponding camera position and eye contact with the model. These pictures were sold in large quantities and found their mostly male audience under the guise of art or science. Around the turn of the century, the art photography movement of pictorialism sought to remove the photographed female nude from the realm of voyeuristic commercial photography. Photographing the naked female body was thus rehabilitated, much like artistic nude drawings. In the 1920s and 30s, nude photography experienced a significant upswing. Dress and lifestyle reforms, the new dance, gymnastics, sport, and above all, the emerging ideologies of nude culture all contributed to a reinterpretation of the female body images. The erotic female body lost its prominence and was replaced by the nature-loving, athletic, flexible, and androgynous type of women. But what was the scandal surrounding the photos of Bauhoff? Even though such images became possible during the social atmospheric change in the 1920s, they were not accepted by the public without protests, opposition, and scandal. The photos quickly became famous as they were not only taken for the dancer's private use, but were also widely published in the illustrated press, photo books, and specialist literature. Whereas previously mostly anonymous models had been depicted undressed, now it was no longer an anonymous naked woman, but a named, internationally recognized dancer. She had commissioned the photographs herself, and with her consent, the images were publicly displayed. Not in secret or in bashfulness, as was typically associated with the feminine stereotype, but with confidence and directness. So direct that in fact, even in books celebrating the new body image, the dancer's pubic area was retouched and smoothed out. You can see the example on the left side. It is in a photo book of Vienna Zoo about the naked dance from 1927. And on the right side, we have fortunately the same photograph in our collection, so without retouching. However, this openness in the photo should not be confused with permissive or even self-assured sexuality. Claire Bauhoff, who, as I mentioned, never saw herself as a nude dancer, viewed her style of dance more as a form of expressive art. Her body became a beautiful vessel for this art and was not intended to arouse the audience. Bauhoff thus elevated her body into a work of art, one that she created and defined herself. And Trude Fleischmann shared this attitude, presenting her model with a confidence that was unfamiliar to her contemporaries at the time. And I think the photo on the left side above shows this really very well, that she saw herself as an art, that the body is an art form, or the dance is something like an art form. However, Bauhoff's photographs were widely distributed, especially in magazines. Fleischmann recognized early on that her success also depended on the distribution of her photographs in the press. She didn't just create portraits for private use, she crafted powerful, high-quality images designed for the media, ensuring her clients' presence extended beyond the personal and into the public eye. In early 1920, around the time she opened her studio in Vienna, a photograph by Fleischmann was published for the first time in the illustrated press. It was a portrait of the dancer Ronny Johansson, which you can see here. Fleischmann expanded her professional network within the illustrated press, making journalistic work her second mainstay alongside her studio. Beginning in 1922, she contributed to Wiener Mode, followed by frequent contributions to Die Bühne. Here are two examples, very nice one. She was really very often, her photos were on the title pages, like here, and regular features in Wiener Magazin from 1929 by the mid-1920s. Her photographs also appeared in widely circulated Austrian magazines such as Wiener Bilder, Das Interessante Blatt, and Moderne Welt. Here are some examples of photos. This is also again Adolf Loos, the architect, which we have seen in her very first photograph. Fleischmann's photographs were not only high demanded by the Austrian press, but also frequently featured in widely circulated illustrated journals and magazines in Germany in the second half of the 1920s. Trude Fleischmann's reputation as a star photographer grew not only through her successful studio work, but even more through her widespread presence in the illustrated press. With the exception of Dora Kalmu's Atelier Dora, no other Viennese photographer was as prominently featured in the press during the interwar period as Fleischmann. At the height of her fame, she made a strategic decision to the late 1920s to place the marketing of her photographs in professional hands. She entrusted their distribution to the renowned Viennese photo agency Wiener Fotokurier, and later Schostal, which by the 1930s represented numerous internationally acclaimed photographers, including Lotte Jacobi, Sherman Krull, and Ivar from Germany, as well as Dora Kalmus and Lothar Rübert from Austria. Here is just can see the stamp on the backside of a photograph. At the end of the 1920s, Fleischmann took a new direction in the journalistic use of her images, significantly expanding her repertoire. In addition to her studio portraits, she began supplying the press with landscape photography and travel reports. This career shift is particularly interesting as it highlights how the photographer responded to the profound upheavals within Austrian society around 1930. She not only adapted to the new circumstances thematically, but also explored new aesthetic directions. Her travelogues, for instance, are much more conventional than the work she created in the studio. Around 1930, Austria entered to a prolonged economic crisis that, combined with increasing political instability, led to widespread insecurity and societal polarization. In the spring of 1933, conservative and reactionary forces ultimately prevailed. Chancellor Engelbert Dollfuss dissolved parliament, and by 1933 and 1934, the social democratic and communist opposition had been disempowered. A brief civil war in February 1934 resulted in the final defeat of left-wing forces. These political upheavals were also reflected in public imagery. Magazines increasingly turned away from urban themes, favoring the pictures of an idealized rural counterworld instead. Landscapes, countryside scenes, idyllic genre images, high mountains, local traditions, and folklore became the dominant visual motifs. The aim was to promote a new concept of Heimat, homeland. The new government idolized rural communities and the farming population of the Alpine regions as the foundation of a supposed cultural tradition. As a result, Heimatfotografie took on political significance and was widely featured in exhibitions and publications, especially in the growing promotion of Alpine tourism. Here we have two examples how Trude Fleischmann positioned herself with her photographs. Whether or not photographers saw themselves as Heimat photographers may be debatable. However, the sentimental homeland scenes represent only a portion of Fleischmann's work in the 1930s and are not enough to classify her as a traditional Heimat photographer. It is also important to remember that in 1933, her business connections and likely a significant source of income with the German press were abruptly cut off. As a photographer of Jewish origin, she was no longer permitted to publish in Germany. Trude Fleischmann's successful career as a photographer in Vienna came to an abrupt end in March 1938. Her final published photograph, this one, appeared on the cover of Die Bühne in the second issue of that month, a portrait of her friend, the actress Paula Wessely, taken in a Tyrolean ski resort. Just as her career had taken off rapidly, after 1918 it came to a sudden halt 2 decades later. Riots, raids and looting, along with arrests, public humiliation, and the relentless persecution of the Jewish population became daily occurrences following the Anschluss of Austria to the German Reich on March 13, 1938. The anti-Semitic and racist acts of robbery, expropriation, persecution, and intimidation, culminating in exile or deportation to concentration and extermination camps, are chillingly reflected in the dry, bureaucratic language of the official documents, deregistered on or business resigned on. Jewish photographer studios were either Aryanized or forcibly shut down. Image collections were lost, looted, or only in rare cases, partially saved by being taken abroad. Shortly after March 1938, crossing the Austrian border illegally had already become nearly impossible. Trude Fleischmann was forced to undergo the harrowing process of legal emigration, which included paying the Reichsflight tax and other imposed fees. When she fled Vienna on September 3, 1938, initially traveling to Paris to visit friends, she carried only a few selected negatives and prints, her camera and the studio album. She had given her old Rolleiflex to her friend, the well-known photographer and graphic designer Robert Haas, and, as she later recounted in 1986, had destroyed most of her archive, keeping only 100 to 200 negatives, which she entrusted to a neighbor. Today, we know that she was able to save many photographs, negatives, and even her guest books in the United States. However, how this was accomplished remains unclear and still requires further research. In 1940, Trude Fleischmann opened a photo studio at 127 West 65th Street together with her colleague Frank Elmer, later running it alone until 1969. Here is an example of a backside with the stamp, with the new stamp of her New York studio. And this photograph, taken by Franz Elmer later, he is named Frank Elmer, shows Trude Fleischmann together with Robert Haas reviewing photographs. By the way, Trude Fleischmann's monogram, which we have seen in several photographs before, was designed by Robert Haas. Fleischmann was not the only émigré photographer to settle near Central Park. Lotte Jacobi, Ruth Jacobi, Gerda Peterich, and Illa also established studios in the same area. The studio where she also lived was located in the vibrant theater district, just behind the renowned Carnegie Hall. Like her colleagues, Fleischmann's new surroundings influenced her photographic motives. Carnegie Hall became the backdrop of her portraits of musicians and conductors, including the renowned Italian conductor Arturo Toscanini. After their first meeting in 1946, she produced several series of photographs of him until his death. She also captured Toscanini alongside her former student and close friend from her Vienna days, Robert Haas, which you can see on the left side, with whom she maintained a lifelong bond. One portrait features Haas next to Toscanini and his wife, while another image of Robert Haas includes Fleischmann standing beside the conductor. Their collaboration was sometimes so intertwined that in our collection we have two prints of the same motif, one signed by Robert Haas and the other by Trude Fleischmann. Who actually took the picture at what time remains a mystery. At Christmas in 1939, having only recently arrived in New York, Trude Fleischmann quickly participated in a sales exhibition organized by the Center for European Immigrant Arts and Handicraft in the Empire State Building. More than 200 immigrant artists and craftspeople, unable to continue their work in their native Germany or Austria, showcased their creations after an American jury had recognized their exceptional quality. Trude Fleischmann contributed her portraits of prominent stage artists, the very works that had made her famous in Vienna. Eleanor Roosevelt visited the exhibition in mid-December and did much of her Christmas shopping there. 5 years later, Fleischmann photographed Eleanor Roosevelt, whom she met in Hyde Park, according to a note on the back of the photo portrait. This one you can also see at the exhibition later. Trude Fleischmann's life in New York was marked by continued artistic work and adapting to her new surroundings. She maintained connections with prominent figures, adjusting her photography to the new cultural context. Her subjects included intellectuals and artists like Albert Einstein and Oskar Kokoschka. She gradually rebuilt her personal network in New York, establishing herself as a significant portrait photographer within the exile community. Her success in New York was undoubtedly bolstered by her extensive experience, both in the technical and practical aspects of photography and in managing her own portrait studio prior to emigrating. Her established reputation as a distinguished photographer also played a key role in her ability to quickly re-establish herself. Moreover, Fleischmann photographs continued to gain recognition and were regularly published in prominent magazines. In 1914, one of her images was featured in the U.S. Camera Yearbook, the 100th year of photography, showcasing a woman with her child hanging out the laundry, a likely subject from her extensive travels. A year later, another of her nude photographs was prominently featured in U.S. Camera, furthering cementing her place in the American photographic scene. To secure her livelihood in the United States, Fleischmann undoubtedly had to expand her portfolio to include more commercially lucrative genres such as children's and family portraits. While her artistic and celebrity portraits work remained significant, she also adapted to the demands of her new environment by catering to a broader clientele, ensuring a steady income. These photographs were not only taken in her studio, but also in the homes of her clients. In their familiar, private surroundings, families appeared much more at ease in front of the camera. Personal connections with her subjects was always essential to Fleischmann. She took the time to create a comfortable atmosphere, allowing her to capture each person's true essence. With masterful lighting and precise composition, she portrayed them with individuality and sensitivity, bringing out the unique qualities of each subject in a way that was both intimate and striking. At this point, I will conclude my remarks on Fleischmann's photographic work in the USA, as we will soon have the opportunity to admire her photography, particularly the portraits she created in her new home, at the fascinating exhibition at the Fairfield University Art Museum. In 2011, the Wien Museum, the Vienna City Museum, where I am working, hosted a major retrospective on Trude Fleischmann. While her photographs had likely been exhibited before, this was the first time they were presented on such a large scale, significantly contributing to her recognition. This exhibition marked an important step in ensuring her legacy as a pioneering photography, highlighting her remarkable contributions to the art of portraiture and the broader photographic world. A reflection of her enduring influence can be found in our new museum, where the restaurant is named after her. Yeah. But this wasn't our idea. Rather, the tenant of the restaurant and cafe was so inspired by her photographs that he chose the name Trude and Daughters. The elegant restaurant Trude and the adjoining cafe and Daughters serve as a tribute not only to Trude Fleischmann but also to the many female photographers whose contributions still deserve greater recognition. And that's not all. 5 years later, after our exhibition in 2016, a street in one of Europe's largest urban development areas in Vienna was named after Trude Fleischmann. And who knows, perhaps a square, a coffee house, or even another street will soon be named after Trude Fleischmann as her legacy continues to grow and become better known here in Fairfield. Especially following the exhibition at the Fairfield University Art Museum. With this in mind, I would like to express my gratitude to everyone who made it possible for me to give this talk today. My sincere thanks go to Barbara Rosenberg-Loss, who tirelessly championed the idea of an exhibition on Trude Fleischmann. To Carrie Weber, who curated this wonderful exhibition I have already seen. It's really great. And to Megan Pacqua, Michelle DiMarzo, and Heather Coleman, who always assisted me with practical matters. So thank you for your attention.